Welcome to LeadWisely by WonderTour. We are in a conversation about the movie Ready Player One. So, Brian, let's start off with a tough question about leadership. How do we use technology to create more opportunity rather than more inequality?
Oh, this is fabulous. I love this question. So, in the context of an organization, in the context of a business or whatever kind of organization you're involved in, you're going to have a hierarchy, right? The organizations inherently have, there's some people in charge, and then there are layers, and there are people that are doing jobs at various levels. And I think our experience has been when you do technology projects, when you're rolling out a new technology in an organization, it's a really common pattern, possibly trap, to focus that technology on how is it going to benefit the people that are already the most powerful in that organization, the leaders, or what we'd love to call the early adopters, the people who already love the technology, who want technology for technology's sake, who are the overachievers, the top guns, the hot shots, the A-plus performers, the 10X programmers. And we tend to focus the technology on those constituents, those members of our organization. And to some extent, this is really natural, right? Your highest leverage on making good decisions can appear to be, well, let's make sure that the vice president doesn't make a terrible decision. Make sure that the CEO makes good decisions. Make sure that the CFO knows what's going on, right? The easiest way to roll out a new technology is to take the people that are excited about making change and excited about getting better and excited about tech and ask them to use it. And so it's natural, and in some cases, it's a really good way to run the experiment, or it is a high leverage way to do it. But the trap is, in the question you asked, is that approach will tend to create more inequality. It will tend to make the people who are powerful and influential, it will lock in the decision-making authority at their level. It will take the people who are overachievers, who are successful in the current system, who feel empowered, and it will make them more empowered or more effective and get more recognition and all the things that normally happen to people in an organization. They'll get promoted faster, they'll get higher visibility, they'll get bigger bonuses, right? So those aren't necessarily bad things. Like, you want to take motivated people and make them more motivated. But it's also a potential blind spot where you are then, by definition, saying the other people don't need to make decisions. The other people don't need to be empowered. The other associates who are keeping their heads down and getting their jobs done, they don't need new technology just because they're not asking for it, or they couldn't have a better experience, or they couldn't be more effective because they today aren't the ones beating on the door saying, I want a ChatGPT model, or I want to use the cool new thing. So this is the real question: is what is the upside down world version of that look like? A lot of the transformation, kind of business transformation ethos that's out there, the techniques that are out there, the lean methodologies, the agile methodologies, stem from an understanding that the best way to gain performance in an organization is not by consolidating power at the top, but by distributing it, by finding what individual people are best at and making them really good at it, but also making sure that what they're doing is really well aligned with the value chain, or is not wasting time with the product purpose and the roadmap and the backlog, right? So all of these practical business things that we do in transformation are trying to make people at every level more effective. And so how do we use technology to do that? If you're implementing a decision support tool, if you're implementing a dashboard, if you're implementing a recommendation engine, if you're implementing a simulation tool, how do you use that not to make it so that the vice president is the only one that gets to make any decisions, but that everybody makes good decisions all the time with their unique knowledge and skills? Like, what does that look like if you work in that organization? And how would that change a technology deployment that you were planning?
So, Brian, what you're really saying is we need to identify the personas, and especially identify the personas that are all over the organization, that are potentially the most underserved, because we have the most to benefit when we can help those underserved personas. And I think as we move forward, we're going to talk a little bit about how maybe becoming more efficient isn't the benchmark for how to serve those underserved personas.
Yes, we'll have a rant on efficiency here at some point, I feel confident. So. All right, this is a great place to break for our actual introduction then. So thank you everyone for listening. I'm Brian.
I'm Drew Perot.
And we are on a journey to become better leaders by touring fantastic worlds, by looking at this inspiring lore, and by going on a wonder tour.
We connect leadership concepts to story context because it sticks to our brains better. You can find out more at WonderTourPodcast.com.
So yeah, in the last episode, we talked about what is the purpose of technology. And in the context of myself, the technology for escapism, technology for gaming and movies, we challenged each of us to look at, why am I using this technology? What, is it supporting a purpose in my life? Do I understand what I'm getting out of it? This is kind of the same question, but it's the top-down question, is what's the purpose of a technology in an organization? And one really powerful way to look about it, again, is to take it back to the humans. Who is the technology for? Who are you trying to benefit by deploying technology in your organization? And it might, you might be doing it because everybody else is doing SAP, or everybody else is doing Salesforce, or because there's, your old ERP system is, bloated and outdated and built on some server that you can't get upgrades for anymore, and you got to do a new thing. Great. A lot of times technology programs happen to us. But while we're doing them, who are we doing them for? And I love that you brought in the idea of personas as like a tech world way of saying, like, let's think about the people that are in our organization and the roles that they play and the problems they kind of try to solve, and look at the technology from that lens. So what does that look like in your experience? What are good and bad examples of how that might go?
Well, let's go back to our source material here in Ready Player One, and let's look at how some of the different characters handle who they're designing for. So the most obvious example is probably Sorrento and Halliday, right? So we have a couple scenarios where those guys even are in the same room together in these memories that we're looking at in the archives. But either way, their approach is totally different. Halliday is all about creating joy for the players. He's trying to create this world where people have infinite possibilities. And so that's why it is turned up to 11, and it does allow you to do all of these crazy feats. And he really is so focused on the players, the grassroots, and how he can do good things for them. Where you see Sorrento, and of course the typical movie villain way. I mean, come on, you have Ben Mendelsohn playing this villain. Ben Mendelsohn basically exclusively plays villains that have some greedy, like they're just trying to get money and they don't care about sustainability or quality or anything else, right?
Right.
But he's coming in and he's not worried about who he's designing for. Who he's designing for is him and the shareholders, pretty much. That's it. So
right.
He's like, he comes into Halliday and he's like, well, we should have like a gold tier and a platinum tier, and the highest tier could be water. It's like, well, he has no concept of who he's designing for and why that would be good for the players. It's all just like, we could upsell them on X.
Right. No, this is amazing. And he's even got a little bit of the Casablanca system, right? Where he's bought into the rules so thoroughly that he's like nakedly two-faced. He's like, oh, I had to make you that offer because the board said that I had to, but actually I really wanted you to reject it because I want to crush you and, murder you personally and just take over. Like he's very much into it for himself, but also for the joy of imposing order on this chaotic thing, right? He's that personality as like, the problem is that everybody gets to do what they want. And the goal is that everybody behaves and they get punished when they don't behave, right? So the organization that he runs that we see is an organization which has taken this promised world of you can do anything you want and made a whole bunch of grunts out of it, right? They're the people that work for their organization are literally the way that a lot of us feel working for a big organization, is they have the white barcode number on their chest and the faceless mask, and they just do what they're told, right? So that's the Hollywoodized version of it, but it's also kind of a real thing, right? How many times have you been part of a software deployment, a new technology? Oh, hey, we've got a new expense report system and travel request system at our company, and you just feel like you're just this, barcode mouse trying to run through the maze, figuring out how can I get paid back for coffee the other day, right? It's not for me. There's some purpose on the other end of this, but it's clearly for the organization because nobody considered my experience in the process of rolling this out.
Yeah, it's that process design or experience design and stuff like that we definitely need to look at. And then it's just, to me, it's the approach that we take when we do it. Who is the technology for? It's going back to what you said in the last episode, which is that really there is no purpose of technology. What is your purpose? So unless we are very clear in what is your purpose, then it's easy to fall into the trap. And so maybe let's look at another example in Ready Player One. If we instead look at a maybe less obvious example than Sorrento and Holiday, if we were to look at Iraq versus Sam. So talk to me a little bit about what you see in those two characters and how they're contrasted in their approach to technology and to problem solving in the world or in this virtual world.
Yeah, so these are great avatars of personalities, right? So IROC is the, kind of the second in command villain or whatever. He's he's the other antagonist, and he is perfectly adapted to this environment. He's completely bought into the Oasis. He's completely bought into this mercenary winner take all. It's all about the Benjamins, thing. And he'll just do whatever is required. And he's quite happy about it. Like he knows that he's sort of mercenary, but he's like, hey, I'm really good at this. This is, I rock. So, and he thrives in that environment up until the point at the end of the movie where somebody even more mercenary and heartless than him, threatens to take it all away. Whereas the Samantha character, who's Kira, right, and is her character, she's very upfront. Once Wade Parsival has a real conversation with her, she's very upfront about, like, you don't understand, like, this, I'm not here for the game. I'm not here to win because I want to win. I'm here because I'm trying to solve a problem in the real world. This giant evil corporation can't be in charge, and I have to get there first, right? And so she has a purpose. She has a purpose that is larger than the virtual world set of rules. She's just trying to follow the rules so that she can have agency in the real world.
She's focused on people and freedom, and she has
Right.
a personal purpose, where
Right.
you see the opposite is Iraq, who doesn't really have a personal purpose. And if you take this and you look at how Halliday kind of designed this environment, the Iraq person, of course, that's going to be a potential option, that persona. And he's trying not to cater too hard to that persona, but of course it's a game, and so he does allow somebody to go down that path. As the creator of the game, it is possible somebody's going to go down that path, but really what we see, going back to Holiday, what he wants to see is he wants to see the world evolve with its users, and he wants to see a world that actually continues to benefit its users and doesn't converge towards, like, Iraq's end. Look at the end of Iraq, like you said. He's there and he's like, wait a second, you're saying we might destroy the game? It's like, but the game is everything to me. Like, we can't destroy the game.
Right. Well, and like the best thing, it's part of the trap of escapism, right? Is the best thing that can possibly happen to Iraq is he gets more stuff, and the worst thing that can possibly happen to Iraq is he loses all of his stuff. Right? Like neither of these are actually terribly consequential, but he's locked himself into this paradigm. And so, the movie, of course, presents us with our main character, Wade, has to make a decision between these two paths, right? When we meet him, he's totally on the IROC path. He's like, oh yeah, I got all sorts of plans. When I win this thing, I'm going to buy a big house and a bunch of stuff. Like he doesn't actually have a purpose other than escapism. But he has the advantage that he's bought into not just the game, but he's bought into Halliday's persona. He's bought into this persona of this character who is trying to transcend his personal struggles and create something that helped other people. And so at the end, we kind of get, he kind of gets clarified that that's the decision he's making. He's got the example of Samantha Kira. He's got the example of, I did actually accidentally make friendships in this game, not just because we were helping each other get gold, but because we just had all these casual hangout interactions. And they show that, I think in the book, they show that a lot better, the sort of the casual friendship building that is enabled by this virtual world too. But because he's got those human connections and because he recognizes that Halliday himself never really got to that point, never really figured out how to make human connections through his virtual world, he kind of, our main character, of course, very Hollywood, sort of understands that and makes that call.
But isn't he's the second Halliday? And that's what Halliday wanted. He wanted a second Halliday who didn't have the failings of the first Halliday. And so he designed a puzzle that hopefully the second Halliday would be able to solve, and that second Halliday would be the 2.0 version that would be able to figure it out. And then we see iteration. Yeah, exactly. He's the better iteration, essentially. And of course, there could be a third and whatever still. But what we see is that, they institute 2 days a week of downtime on the Oasis, amongst, I'm sure, many other things. That is essentially heads-up governance that's trying to be for people instead of being for a company or for an experience or something like that. It's all about who are we designing for? Who are the personas in our world? And I think all of this comes together in our mountaintop moment for this episode, where, Brian, why don't you take us into our mountaintop moment?
Yeah, this is awesome. I was just about to get there. So if we think about that, if the trap is escapism, if the trap is buying into the rules of the game, if the trap is doing the game for the game's purpose, then what's the alternative, right? And the alternative is, in this movie, it's portrayed as this moment where we have Wade and Samantha in their human personas and their human bodies sitting on a bench on a rooftop in Columbus, Ohio, surrounded by vat grown vegetables, having a very quiet, very personal, direct, uncomfortable interaction they don't know what the rules are and it's totally unscripted and they don't really know what they're going to do and it's super awkward. But they're like, wow, it's really slow here and it's really quiet and nothing is exploding quite yet. Right. And we have to decide how to just be with each other. We have to decide, we have to reveal who we are to some extent and have a real conversation. And so the movie holds this up as that moment, but it's actually really good the way they portray it, as a contrast to the incredible glossiness and frenetic energy of everything in the Oasis that you see. There's like, oh, actually, this was kind of the point. This was the thing that Halliday never got to. That he was trying to create this, human connections, and he created escapism. He created shallow connections, but he didn't create the deeper ones because you can't do them there, right? And so that's our mountaintop moment, is like realizing that this slowing down, realizing that opening up, realizing that breathing actual air is kind of the point. Whether it's for entertainment purposes or for larger organizational purposes, like, Kira's got a mission and this actually helps her. Like making personal connections, but also thinking about the challenge of personal connections is what helps her in the game and what helps them in real life.
So that moment where they slow down is the flipped script. Is the script flip that we always talk about here on WonderTour. It's when something happens that subverts the narrative. At this point, everything is speeding up, and it's all about we have to go as fast as possible to find that new tech, to find the next key, so that we can be the first to solve Halliday's puzzle. But the only way to actually move forward is, well, the first key is to move backwards. So the only way to move forward is to move backwards. And the second key, the only way to move forward is to slow down, exit the Oasis, and actually have that real moment. And like you said, it's the slowest moment of the entire movie. And it's beautiful. And you don't have this CGI going on. You just have this actual shot of these individuals. And then from then on in the movie, you actually get probably somewhere near half of the shots are now going to be in the real world as opposed to inside the Oasis. It's this turning point where the characters recognize we're aligned to a mission in real life. The technology is just a means to a purpose, like we've been talking about. So now that we've all agreed on this purpose, who cares if our characters die in this game or whatever?
Right.
We now know what actually matters. And guess what? We have to slow down. He almost creates this like Oasis Sabbath, right? He's like, hey, there's going to be a day each week or 2 days or whatever where in the end, once he has control of it, where people can't be in this world, they have to stop and remember what real life is actually about.
Right. And so that zoom out lesson, I think, can be applied in an organization. It can be applied in a business or a leadership context, right? It is the goal of using the software is not to use the software better. The goal of deploying the software is not so that everybody does things exactly the same way, so you know exactly what's happening at all times, right? That is a way to do it, but that is not a purpose in and of itself. Like the purpose is, can your organization be more effective? Can your people be more effective? Can they be, like I said, the agile mantra, the lean mantra is pushing the authority and the decisions down to the lowest level, making them clear enough on the big mission that they can be super clear on how what they're doing connects to it, and then trust them to do it. Right. And that is very different from a lot of times what we see software being deployed in a big organization to amplify its mission. That's not necessarily the way it gets perceived or the way it gets rolled out. And, maybe you just forgot about those personas. Maybe you didn't look at what their experience would be, or maybe we didn't even examine the purpose in the first place.
Maybe it's because we didn't slow down. That's a starting point when it feels like the world is moving at a breakneck pace, and to just stop for a sprint, to just have this moment where you're sitting on the bench instead of just racing the hair, racing the hair, racing the hair. It just feels like you're going to get left in the dust if you stop for a second. But I think what's really critical here is it's not, you have to stop one way or another. If you just keep moving at a breakneck pace, eventually you have to stop. But it's figuring out strategically, when are we going to slow down? It's slowing down on a rhythm. It's having those retrospectives. It's not always being so focused on efficiency. There's times to be focused on efficiency, but really the end goal is not to become more efficient so that we can become more efficient. That's the tech for the sake of tech trap. And that trap doesn't actually have a purpose. So I think that's a good indicator. And I think we've all probably fallen into it sometimes. If you look around and you're doing a technology implementation, or you're pushing forward your business model or something like that, and you're like, wait a second, I don't know if we have a purpose, or like, I'm not super clear on if this is still the purpose. And if you ask the team, can you tell me what the purpose is? And their version of the purpose is not what you think the purpose is or something. That's a good sign you might be doing tech for the sake of tech.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're getting into our practical application discussion here, right? It was like thinking about how do we use these lessons? How do we think about slowing down? How do we think about who is it for? How do we think about the purpose? So yeah, this my efficiency rant for the day is this. Whenever we have this conversation inside an organization, is a lot of times you will have this, oh, we're going to do this because it will make us more efficient, right? That's a phrase that people love to talk about, and it's a real thing. It's valuable. And my challenge is always the actual like mathematical definition of efficiency is output over input, right? And almost always when you're rolling out technology, you're looking at the denominator. You're looking at the input. You're like, oh, we're going to do less hours of work to get the same output. We're going to have less manpower required. We're going to have less waste. We're going to spend less money. We're going to, whatever. It's always the denominator. And that's a valid piece of it, but it's only half of it, right? And because you can't, the end game of that is to zero, right? I can absolutely cut costs to zero, right? I can lay off the entire workforce and I will not spend any money. Theoretically, if even one thing gets done, I'm now infinitely efficient, right? Right? But that is not the path to success. That's certainly not the path to transforming anything or creating extraordinary growth. The numerator is also important. The what is your output? And so if you think about it not in terms of efficiency, but in terms of productivity, how do I take the people that I have and the resources that I have and the time that I have and do as many great things with that? How do I make sure that the output is better and better aligned and more impactful with the resources that I've got? You get two things, right? One is you get out of this cut your way to victory mindset where you're not worried about, oh, you guys are screwing up by spending my money, or you're spending so much time. Why are you so inefficient, right? But you also get, just like what venture capitalists talk about, you get asymmetrical upside. The most money I could possibly save is only the money that I'm spending. The most money that I could possibly make is substantially more multiples of the money that I'm spending. If I figure out the way to use my resources as well as possible, if I figure out how to be the most effective organization to change the world as possible, then you can become 2, 3, 5, 10, 100 times more productive. But it's very, very difficult to be 100 times more efficient. So that's one of these conversations. Like, you can't 10% cut your way to victory, right? It's not to say you shouldn't cut 10% of your costs, but that's not going to transform the world. That's not going to make you world class. So my usual rant is, please measure productivity too, or instead, and think about it, because the numerator is purpose. The numerator is how do you measure whether or not you're accomplishing your goal in the world. And the lessons of agile, the lessons of lean those aren't local. Those are global. Those are for the organization. Is what I'm doing making the organization's goal succeed? Not did I issue slightly more, SKUs this month, or did I, produce slightly more widgets this month? But did that actually result in more happy customers? Did that actually result in, whatever my organization is, healthcare? Did that result in fewer unhealthy people in the world? That's the goal. The stuff in the middle is just different ways of getting there, and you need to empower your people to figure that out.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the traps that you're unearthing here. The trap of tech for the sake of tech. If you keep advancing that, and your metric is efficiency for the most part, or one of your main metrics is efficiency, there's nowhere to go but zero, or but like the lower limit. Essentially, you're just trying to go as close as possible to the bottom. Which again, look, that's a race to the bottom. We've seen this over and over and over again in the economy. And going back to our original question that we talked about, how do we not create more inequality, but instead create opportunities? Well, we have to start measuring by productivity instead of measuring everything by efficiency, because an efficiency gain doesn't actually necessarily do something good for humans. Efficiency can be great for humans when they're doing just a mundane task and we're trying to make that task better, and they hate doing that task, and they're, that task inherently is giving them carpal tunnel or whatever, right? Okay, great. Then you have a purpose. Your purpose is to make sure that the human has good well-being while performing the task or whatever, while performing the mission that the company needs to exist. That's great. But what's not good is just tech for the sake of tech. We can achieve 25% more cost down on our manpower. But what is this allowing us to do? And like you said, it's really measuring it overall in productivity.
Right. Or we need to make everything super standardized so that the executives have a perfect image of what's happening so they can make all the decisions better, right? Like that's some amount of that is valuable. Like they should know how much money they're spending. They should know where the problems are in the company. But the point is not so that they can then make all the decisions, right? The point is not so that only the hotshot associates can be more hotshots, right? The goal is that wherever the decisions are being made, wherever the opportunities to add value there are, that the technology is helping that happen rather than hindering it. And the challenge is, the thing that we've all seen is that top-down applications of technology solely for transparency, solely for executive decision-making, solely for standardization, almost inherently stink. Like they're terrible at the ground level. They make things worse for the people that are doing the actual work that your company does, that are performing the actual output of your organization. And that's the trap. The tech for tech's sake, or the tech for leadership's sake, is negative efficiency because it hurts your productivity. It hurts your alignment to purpose. It hurts your visibility to purpose.
Yeah, and really, this is a trap that we can walk into right now. I mean, this trap, the door is always open, basically, with how fast we're moving as a civilization. But tech for tech's sake with generative AI is just the same as it has been, right? High performers, high performing teams do really well with AI. Mid-level performing teams, not so much right now. And so there is an opportunity for us to help to make sure that we don't create a bigger gap between the high performers and the mid and low performers, and end up leaving people behind like we have with other technological revolutions. And you could argue that eventually it gets sorted out, and maybe it does, but as we as humans, who, for me, like I said, my personal purpose is to help other people achieve freedom. What I don't want to do is what we have probably all been victims of before, because we're all consumers of technology, users of technology. We see where let me just paint a picture for you, right? Big tech mindset is hire the best technical skill sets in the world, hire the most advanced minds, and put them in a room together and let them design the most advanced solutions. I'm not saying that everybody does this. Don't hear me as painting with a broad brush. I'm just saying here's a specific example. It does happen. And what you end up with doing is creating an advanced solution that creates a bunch of Sixers in Ready Player One terminology. It creates a bunch of bots. And guess who most of those bots are? Either the people at the company who are already the worst off, or the people in society who are already the worst off. And sometimes it's us, right? It's the users of certain, certain social media features. It's the users of certain online shopping experiences and features and things like that, right? Instead of giving us more freedom, the ability to follow our purpose, we now are more entrapped.
So yeah. So let's take this back to our WonderTour conversations, our WonderTour mindset, right? We're talking about, what does a magnanimous leader look like, right? If I'm a magnanimous leader in a company, I'm a team leader. I'm not a superstar, but I'm an experienced person and I'm pretty good at my job and I've got people working for me. Then the using technology for helping, for inequality would be, we get a new technology, and what I'm going to do is it's going to make me really effective. I'm going to have a dashboard that makes really good decisions. But the way that I get to do that is all of my people need to spend an extra hour of a day filling out some online thing so I know exactly what they're doing with their time and exactly what interactions they have. So their lives are getting less productive, and I'm getting better at making decisions. But also, I'm then more likely to thrive, right? I'm going to be the one that looks like I'm making good decisions, and I can show cool dashboards and meetings, right? That is accelerating the gap between me and the people that work for me. That's not the magnanimous leader. That's not the Doctor Strange. It's not about you lesson, right? The magnanimous leader version is the inversion of that, which is that how do I do it so that I make fewer decisions? How do I do it so that the people that work for me, the people that I'm supposedly mentoring and helping, are getting closer and closer to my capability every single day? So pretty soon there's 5 of us instead of 1. Right? How do we use technology so that they have time for me to mentor them, for they have experiences that I had more quickly than I did? They catch up more quickly. They don't make all the same stupid mistakes that I made. So that suddenly now you have a team of people that all have very high capability. Those two mindsets are very, either one of those is available, but it's very easy to fall into the I'm in charge, therefore we should invest in making me more effective mindset, rather than the I am knowledgeable, therefore I should invest in bringing other people up to my level as fast as possible. If the people who hire into your organization or join you, if their experience is that you're investing in them, that you want to get them to be amazing and you want to let them make decisions as quickly as possible without letting them burn, that's a very different experience than they hire in and they understand that their job is to grind so that you can thrive.
Yep. And if we look at the example of the submarine captain David Marquet, if you haven't seen the video, just go Google it. It's the best video, or the best like content that you can consume in like 8 minutes on decentralizing decision making. He points out that really, in order to be able to decentralize decision making, in order to be able to have other people be wise and successful and things like that, they need to have competence and clarity. So your job as a leader is to make sure they have competence and clarity. And in the end, isn't that your total job as the leader? Basically, clarity on the goals of the organization, the strategy, what is in and out of scope, and things like that, and competence, developing leaders, developing skill sets, developing technical abilities, and things like that, so that people can go forth and conquer. So if this is the case, then how can we use technology to build competence? How can we use technology to communicate more clearly, or to develop a more high fidelity model that's even clearer on what our vision and mission and everything is? That's a purpose that we can use technology for. And that's what we see Halliday doing to bring this home, right? Halliday's whole puzzle with the 3 keys. What is it doing? It gives clarity over the course of the puzzle to what the Oasis is for, what it is not for, and it also gives competence. If somebody can solve this puzzle, like Wade is able to solve it, the person must then be competent enough to make the next decision of how they can use the Oasis in the future after he's gone.
This is great. So the 3 keys, right, are the 3 lessons, right? The first key, go backwards, right, is the lesson of slow down and look around, and it's the lesson of don't follow the rules. The rules are just there to make the game work. They're not the point, right? The second lesson is the lesson about human connection, right? It's also the slow down lesson, but it's the lesson about connect with the people, not the technology. And the third lesson is the it's not about you lesson, and it's not about winning, right? The way to the third key is to not go to the end of the game, but just go to the hidden place where you can learn about somebody. And then the way to win is to not make it about I'm in charge now, but to like, signing a contract doesn't even seem like the right solution. That doesn't seem like a Halliday solution. Like, I just want to do this with my team.
Yes.
So those are the leadership lessons. Those are the magnanimous leader lessons that we've been talking about for a year, right? It's not about you, right? So clarify the purpose and think about how to bring the people up around you, and use the rules, use the tools for their value, for their benefit, but for something.
I think that's it, Brian. I think that was the key takeaways there. In some, are we subordinating people to technology for the sake of efficiency, or are we subordinating tech to people for a mission and purpose?
Yes. Love it. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. We hope you all enjoyed listening to us and joining us in video once again. We always enjoy these conversations. What do we have queued up next? We've been talking about technology helping us go faster and faster and faster. So naturally, Ford versus Ferrari seems like a segue to this conversation. So we'll be talking about that in our next couple episodes. I'm really looking forward to that. In the meantime, thanks again for joining us. And just remember, as always, character is destiny.